Hey there, welcome to episode 141 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 10:38 in the morning, a.m., Pacific Standard Time here in the greater Vegas area on Friday, November 7, 2025. Time is flying, regardless of whether we're having fun. Today's title and topic, Making a Scene. You'll find out what that means. If you've never heard, or if this is your first time listening to, in fact, the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, or if you've never heard of what Cafe Genius is, allow me to tell you. First, Cafe Genius, 2 words, cafe spelled with 2 F's, an homage to Cafe Centro, a cool little coffee shop, unfortunately no longer in business, formerly located in the South Park area of San Francisco, very near what is today the Oracle ballpark. It used to be the AT&T ballpark, and before that, I think it was the Pac Bell or Pacific Bell ballpark. I hung out there when it was the AT&T ballpark. It was a quaint little coffee shop where startups start, as they used to say. Jack Dorsey, for better or worse, famously working on Twitter at the Cafe Centro at some point when things started getting interesting. One of several where startups start. I've often said Vegas, greater Vegas area needs a few Cafe Centros as part of its entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. There are a couple. I don't think they've been sort of classified or categorized or elevated or however you want to view it. Come to one of these places to get your startup started. Anyway, Genius is an homage of sorts to the Genius lunches we used to have back in the Downtown Project days. I did not organize or drive those. I was often invited because I was taking part so much in the global innovation scene when I was working with Intel. So if I was in town, I was often invited. I was not part of the Downtown Project. It tended to be Downtown Project entrepreneurs gathering ad hoc for a quick lunch, a chat, a little exchange of information, some gossiping, who's doing what, who's not, and so on. Seems like a good idea. In fact, a previous episode, we have talked about bringing that back, the Genius Lunch. Boy, howdy, is that a tough sell in the Vegas of today. But never give up, never surrender, as a wise captain on a TV show, a fake TV show once said. So Cafe Genius, a combination of those 2 words. And do note the 2 F's. That's important. Cafe Genius Impresarios is an audio program about the impresarios with 2 S's. Those are the people doing interesting and cool things, making it happen within our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. And when you get right down to it, that's what all of this is about, figuring out what works and what doesn't in our ecosystem so we can all be a little bit more successful than we were planning on. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary of today's episode, which it looks like it's about 2 sentences. One longer than the other. I will read it to you and we can decide together. And the links for today's episode, the 2 shameless self-promotion links as always. We don't have a guest, so only the host links. And then 3 episode links that we'll get to in a moment. So when I say wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you're finding it where you're looking for it. There is an RSS feed available for your particular podcatcher. I know we're in the podcast index. We're definitely on YouTube. We're definitely on Apple Podcasts, when last I looked anyway. Amazon Podcasts, of course, Spotify. And we do have our website, which I will get to in a moment. Let's get started with the show notes so we can get on with our Friday or whatever day you're listening to this audio program. The show notes summary. If you've heard a few episodes of this program, you know I tend not to appreciate labels like tech scene and startup scene. They are so overused, but they do have a time and a place in some contexts. Okay, let's make an entrepreneurial innovation scene. Let me correct myself there. Okay, then. I left off the end, so I was like, okay, then, let's make an entrepreneurial innovation scene here in the greater Vegas area. So there you go. We got through that summary eventually. The links for today's episode, like I said, we do have the cafegenius.org homepage, CAFFEGENIUS, no space, no other punctuation, Cafe Genius, and then .org. There you will find links to the current episode and then links to, or a player, an embedded Spotify player. That needs to change. I'm I'm leaning heavily, more so daily at this point, into the Posse notion, the publish on your own site, syndicate elsewhere. That's something I've talked about previously. So I don't want to be beholden totally to Spotify. Spotify is occasionally problematic in a variety of ways. Not overall, they're not so bad, but I don't want to depend on a third party that's got their own, maybe not necessarily independent podcaster oriented goals. So anyway, we do use Spotify to host content for all of my programs so far. That could change, and I want the flexibility to be able to do that. So cafegenius.org, the homepage for the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, and other stuff coming soon. The website itself needs to be beautified. I've talked about this for way too long. My to-do list is all over the place, but a functional and attractive website, coming soon at a TBD time. In the meantime, there is a buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page linking everything as it has for the 5 years or so. So I maintain that page as a sort of out-of-band link tree. It's a free-form profile page. I can put links to everything. So all of my audio programs and various places to find them, a little biographical information at the top, some links to my various projects that I'm working on, and some affiliate links toward the bottom. Now, there's no obligation to spend any money here. You don't have to actually buy me a coffee. You're welcome to if you like. There are links to some of my favorite coffee beans and some other products and services that I actually use. They have affiliate links, so if you are interested in those, it won't cost you anything extra, but it will go towards the purchase of additional coffee, which is what powers all of my efforts. And don't forget, there is the weekly, published Monday mornings, typically 5 minutes or less, usually less, sometimes more like 4 to 4.5 minutes. The Buy Me an Update audio program is a quick rundown on the previous week's audio program topics and any news and announcements upcoming. It's called Buy Me an Update because it's published there first, and it used to be published there exclusively, but now it is also available in all the same places everything else I publish is, and you can find all those links on buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. Now, the links for today's episode, the scene, as in subculture, on Wikipedia, the Wikipedia page. The title is Scene, and then in parentheses, subculture. So there you go. If you've ever wondered if if somebody's actually written down what makes a scene, there you go. And there are other links too. I always say start your quest for knowledge at Wikipedia, but don't necessarily end it there. So when we talk about scenes, sometimes people also talk about culture, scene, community. Community and scene are kind of in the same bin of words that I think are sort of overused, but they're not illegitimate. They're just overused. They do a lot of heavy lifting. I don't think I'm not a supporter of the notion that one can build a community or build a scene, even though the title of this episode is Making a Scene, but we'll get to that in a second. I have 2 articles from Vegas Inc., which is part of the Las Vegas Sun, which is one of our local official statutory news outlets. These are papers of record. This and the Review Journal are listed amongst the Nevada Revised Statutes as papers of record for the Greater Vegas area. So the Las Vegas Sun publishes Vegas Inc. about business, so it's the business section of the paper. So one article, Vegas Inc. and Cox Top Tech Awards 2025. So I wanted to mention this. I wanted to link this here for one reason, and that is there is occasionally recognition and some celebration of accomplishments in the area of innovation. Now, it's unfortunate that they call it the Top Tech Awards. Some things are tech, some things are not. You can check out the founder of Mothership Coffee, for example, who is one of the award winners for 2025. So you can read that article and find out more about that. Not everything has to be tech. So I'm against the use of the term as a catch-all or as an attractor. Hey, tech, but also not tech, right? We should be upfront about the fact that we are not only tech. You can be entrepreneurial and innovative, and you don't ever have to touch a mobile phone or a keyboard on a laptop. You don't ever have to develop anything. You don't have to have ChatGPT write some code that you don't. And even if you're a programmer, you don't have to have code written by an AI that you don't actually understand how it works. You can just do cool things. And, maybe we can do a better job of recognizing and celebrating. Now, here's the thing. You would never have found that article on your own. they make it very tricky to find out what's going on in the, wait for it, startup scene here in Vegas. And so, yeah, there's too much. There's too much going on that nobody ever really hears about because it's not the construction or demolition of a resort or a casino or a stadium for sporting events. It's not road construction or deconstruction for a race. It's not crime. It's not politics. It's not about real estate. So, well, we don't know what to do with it. We'll just stick it in the back pages. And I think that's problematic for a place that wants to fancy itself as a global hub of innovation, although that may not be so true now for various reasons. Reality, perhaps. But also just to indicate to people that there is more to Vegas than the Strip, which is the common notion if you travel outside the U.S. in particular. Oh, Vegas, gambling. Yeah, that's true. But there are other things going on here, so we should talk about those more. They should be more visible. They should be boosted or what's the word I'm looking for? They should be elevated. They should be surfaced. That's the word I was looking for. They should be surfaced more often. The things on the front page of our papers of record are, even the digital version, are often the usual suspects. We don't always get to find out about these things unless we already know we're looking for them. And that should change. We'll get to that in a second. That's why I'm listing it as one of my links for today. And then WaterStart is a local company. It's actually been here for a while. It's not just a startup from 2024 or 2025. You can flip through some previous press and other mentions for years. So Southern Nevada is kind of an epicenter of water conservation and water recovery, water capture, getting all that water that runs off from rain or snow melt, etc. Trying to make sure we maintain a water supply that people can use to survive. We are not a heavily agrarian part of the country, so we don't depend on it too much for crops. But there is some cattle ranching, for example, and it's always good to have water around. It's one of those things. So WaterStart gets a mention. Nevada turning water tech startup ideas into reality. And so they got a mention. I think they're working with UNLV. I don't have the article open at the moment, but they're getting some attention now. It's interesting to note, and I'll mention this again later, that Formula One has some interactions with water conservation in general. So it may be timely with the race coming up in about, about 2 weeks from today, the 20th, I think, November 20, 21, something like that. So 14 days from today, the 7th of November, Formula One back in town. Yay. So yeah, WaterStart. And here again, you wouldn't really know this article was there if you weren't looking for it. It's difficult or tricky even to discover without direction. Now, occasionally it will show up in somebody's news feed if you use like the Google, what is it called? Google News. If it's finding things that are interesting or possibly interesting based on geographical locality, which is, I think, where I saw the Vegas Inc. and Cox Top Tech Awards mentioned. But yeah, these things don't always make the papers on the front page. So they're not always easy to find. And also, people don't often, I hesitate to use this term, but retweet. They don't often publish on social media this kind of stuff. Our content creators, our local influencers tend to skew heavily towards the Strip and gambling or gaming and the pool time in the summer and things to do in Vegas, etc. Almost no interest in, hey, let's check out the startup scene, which is unfortunate, though we should change that. Anyway, those are the links for today's episode. Let's get started on the episode so we can get done and head into the weekend, or again, whatever day you're listening to this. You don't have to listen on Fridays. But let's talk about building versus emerging. As I've said many times, I think a lot of things that people are building are actually emergent. So let's get started with I have previously, so I'm not going to dive into this too much, but the analog of the biological ecosystem and the economic ecosystem. Greater Vegas is a desert, part of the Mojave Desert ecosystem, in fact. Yet we have swimming pools, grass, and people flourishing, not to mention fauna and flora. We have plants and animals that are not necessarily comfortable in the desert. They would not normally thrive or even survive in such a desert without a little bit of help. How does this work? Well, we recover and conserve water. We have air conditioning, thanks Carnot, the Carnot cycle for heat pumps. If you don't know, now you do. And we bring our pets inside and run our sprinklers to keep our landscaping healthy and so on. This is not magic. It is allocation of resources to bend an existing ecosystem to our desires. We are people after all. That's why there are parking lots instead of grass. We are humans. We do all that stuff. Now, we could turn Greater Vegas into a rainforest, could we? Maybe. It would take a tremendous amount of resources, a lot. I have written a lot, but I think it would be a lot more than that. And a lot of time, because this would be something more than heat pumps and water pumps, to say the least. This would be like cloud seeding and who knows what else, all kinds of stuff. We'd be terraforming. We'd be changing the fundamentals of the area. As I've asserted many times in these many episodes, making a fundamental change to the Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem so that it might be the next Silicon Valley. That always kind of makes me like, there are other places, Vegas is as guilty as any other place, claiming such lofty goals. It may be about as challenging as changing the Mojave Desert in this area to a rainforest. An expensive proposition, and here's the thing. If we stop the work of maintaining a rainforest ecosystem in our desert, guess what it will revert to? This is called the climax community. If we want to drive our surroundings away from what is called the climax community, it's almost like I predicted that, we need to maintain that drive, just like we have to keep recovering water from melted snow and rain runoff. It is not a one-time thing. So in order to make our desert human-friendly, we got to have that water, which means we have to collect it and we have to make sure we're not wasting it. We may or may not have enough thanks to water rights and other such things, but for the time being, we're not so bad off. But we have to pay attention to the water. So you have to pay attention to the changes you've made to make your ecosystem survivable, to make sure it can sustain you, so you must sustain it, so to speak. Changing the fundamental economic ecosystem of Greater Vegas is a big challenge. I have asserted that it would take a while, decades perhaps. The real Silicon Valley evolved over many decades, with its emergent culture of innovation already present in its early days when it was becoming Silicon Valley by name. It was becoming Silicon Valley by culture long before that. If you listen to this very audio program, episode 85, Vegas as the next ... Vegas, it actually talks about the evolution of Silicon Valley, which started in the mid 1800s with the gold rush, 1849 or so, if you're familiar. Leland Stanford sold picks and shovels to gold miners, took that money and started a school named for his son in Stanford University, in fact. Thus began the academic component, the educational resources that would drive the cultivation of a innovation culture that sort of took over on its own. It was definitely emergent, but you can listen to that episode for more information about that. By the time capital investment really took off in Silicon Valley, it made a lot of sense because the culture to support potential growth and success was already there. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley because of people like Hewlett and Packard and Shockley Semiconductors, Frank Terman, etc. You can, again, hear all that in episode 85. So those things were happening in the 40s, the mid-40s, the 50s, 1950s. But it definitely got its beginnings long before that. So by the time you and I were learning about this thing in Silicon Valley, the dot-com boom in the early and mid-90s, really, that started a long way back, standing on the shoulders of giants, perhaps. In the near term, though, just like we can water our grass and even some trees every day without converting the entire region, we can provide the underpinnings of subcultural scenes and maybe, just maybe, draw a crowd. An ecosystem is emergent over a long time arc. A subculture can emerge and we can build some of the pieces to enable that emergence on a shorter time horizon on a much smaller scale, though they may also be fleeting. The arts district would, presumably, be near the center of an art scene. Maybe the art scene would develop around the arts district or vice versa. It's hard to say. Until over time, the tenor of the crowds change. The tenor changes, I should say. The rents go up, the demand to be in the arts district where the crowd is, to partake in barbecue and comedy, different types of creativity. So the demand increases, the rents increase, and it might drive out the art scene, and the art scene itself, or the people that made it happen initially, may need to move. And if you want to learn more about that, you can look at how Austin has evolved when the so-called tech scene rained itself down on the creativity and the music and the art and the creativity in general of the Austin keep it weird environment. Did a whole episode on that based on a book. So if you're really interested in that, it's I don't have the episode number in front of me, but you can find it. It's probably got Austin in the title. I need that website. I need my website to list all these things so you can find these more easily. If you've ever tried to find an audio program on Substack, no. Why did that enter my head? I don't care for Substack. On Spotify or anything, finding stuff is a little bit tricky. So when I make references like this, I really need to connect them more explicitly. That's on me. So yeah, the art scene maybe. So any scene, the scene itself should take itself over. It should not be based on a locality, a building. Oh no, they're closing our favorite coffee shop. Therefore, everybody disperses and we never speak again. If that were true, then you'd have to wonder if that scene was really a scene. There I go, overusing that term. Local media coverage. So let's get started on some of the things that I've observed over my 12 years in Vegas. Things that could use some work maybe. I have mentioned this many times in several episodes of this audio program. The local news media environment of Greater Vegas does not really know what to do with an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, especially startups, small businesses, small companies. Unless they're restaurants and bars, they pretty much got that. When a restaurant's opening, they're all over it. When it's closing, they're all over that as well. The link about the top tech awards is an example. You really need to be looking for that because it's not going to be on the front page news. It's not going to get focus or boost. It's a story in the business section tucked in with the other usual stuff. The water startup story, I may have spotted that elsewhere, maybe just that one. I can't remember. I thought Channel 3 did some coverage of it on their website. That's a TV news station. But it smacks a bit of promotional story placement, like a PR engagement, coverage request, which is why I thought initially it would be found in other places, but maybe a Vegas Inc. exclusive. But somebody requested coverage or a news article to be published, perhaps. Something like this. So maybe coincident with the upcoming Formula One race later this month, as I mentioned, given the Formula One connection to water conservation. So, and that's fine. I'm not complaining about that, but it's unfortunate that that's when you get coverage of innovation is when it ties into some other event that's getting a lot more attention. Shouldn't we be recognizing and celebrating innovation in general? This is not the usual thing, but it should be. Startups pursuing novel ideas, viable or maybe a little bit out there, should be getting a mention that can get noticed, that can be found by the casual reader. You can learn all you want about a local or a visitor, a visiting tourist who won a few $1 million on a single bet at the card table or on a slot machine. But are you going to hear anything about a small company that's looking to revolutionize the way that we recapture water, which is something we all need to live? Put it in the back section. Of course, this would mean tuning the consumer awareness elements so that there is some curiosity concerning the ecosystem and what goes on within it. This is a tough sell. It is indeed part of the culture of innovation that has to emerge over time. You cannot make people become interested in innovation and the innovation going on in their neighborhood down the street, on the other side of town, etc. So you can cross your fingers, but you do need to make it available for people to find. And it's a little bit easier when it's not tucked away in the back pages. So it's only found by people looking for it. People should be tripping over this recognition and celebration, for example. On the other hand, a more horizontal approach to information sharing and elevated awareness of the goings-on with local legacy media and local content creators and maybe some additional outlets more focused on entrepreneurialism and innovation could elevate the concept in general. Awareness is important. It can lead to recognition and celebration, the sense that cool stuff is happening down the street or on the other side of town. If we look at the history of Silicon Valley, and again, episode 85, I go into this quite a bit. In the earliest days of the internet going mainstream and before web browsers became available, it was still the printed newspapers that were featuring the startup scene on their front pages. San Jose Mercury, the San Francisco Examiner, and so on. Think about that. Why is innovation not making our local media more frequently? Well, we know the answer because we don't have the culture for that. We just don't. We could, but we do not. Connect local innovation to road construction. You might be onto something. So we could recognize effort of all kinds. That's also a big weakness I've identified over the years. As the post-pandemic refractory, like the recovery period, was settling out and I was exploring the state of affairs in our ecosystem at the time, I began to hear about entities like Startup NV, which were focusing on tech startups. I saw the job rec for an ecosystem VP or some such with the LVGEA, the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. It was focused on on software startups, increasing the population of software engineers in the greater Vegas area, and increasing the investment and exit potential in the tech startup space. Let me be clear about this. There are people here in greater Vegas working in these areas. Tech, software development, tech in general, technology, application of technology, being innovative in that space, etc. Totally fine. I'm not complaining. But this is not the core competence of the greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, I will assert. Not the population anyway. Could it be? Maybe. Is it today? I don't think so. Are there some people and startups working in the tech space and verticals that might be attractive to tech investors? Sure. So I'm, again, I'm not saying there's nobody working on software here. That's not the case in the slightest. What I am saying is that there are other people that are doing entrepreneurial and innovative things that often get left out. I've told this story several times when we first rebooted Code for Vegas as the Code for Vegas Foundation, an independent Nevada nonprofit corporation, and eventually a 501c3 public charity. One of the responses we would often get is, I'm not a coder, therefore am I not welcome to participate? Now, it turns out we have other issues with our culture of innovation not leading people to actually participate. But the question would come up, and we renamed to the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, partially because there's an entire innovation drive in the area, the International Innovation Center, the Innovation District, the notion that this area is a global innovation hub. So Innovate for Vegas fit into there. But as well, innovation can take many forms. You do not need to be a coder to be an innovator. I always tell people you can innovate with food, and that certainly happens here in Vegas. You can innovate with gaming, and that's where the Blackfire Innovation Center, Blackfire Innovation, is in place to enable and encourage entrepreneurialism and innovation and creativity and so on in the hospitality and gaming spaces, among others, perhaps. Maybe they're working on some other things now. So yeah, we don't have to think of everything as, well, if there's not a mobile app, then it doesn't count. And there are other areas of innovation happening in Vegas that are not always getting the attention they probably should be getting. So it's unfortunate. The fun economy, which is trademark. The trademark was granted in February of 2025 to the UNLV Office of Economic Development. Congratulations. So it's important if it has a trademark. That took almost 2 years, I think, to get that sorted. The fun economy may well include some tech and innovation. Stop by Blackfire Innovation, look at whatever Zero Labs is focused on there. Don't get me started on their lack of promotion of their cohorts. So that's something I asked them about 2 cohorts ago. I don't think they're doing it. If you don't know what Zero Labs is, that's part of the problem. Wander around in general. There is stuff going on that is tech adjacent, or maybe something else, maybe not tech. Add in some bio, some water conservation and recovery, and more. Then add in food innovation, exercise innovation, general sustainability innovation, manufacturing innovation, basically a variety of possibilities that do not fit into what most people probably imagine with claims like, we are the next Silicon Valley. We could actually be a better Vegas and have a far better chance at success, which is why episode 85 was titled Vegas as the Next Vegas. We don't need to spend time trying to be something else. We can be better at what we are. That is the thesis. And when you think about it, that's what the focus on the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem really is about. And it doesn't have to be competing with other cities about app development or whatever. It could just be about elevation of the entire place, making entrepreneurialism and innovation first-class citizens. They aren't part of the fun economy until they are. That's another topic for another time. City as a showcase. I did an entire episode on that. The word entrepreneur, by the way, is based on a French word, entreprendre. Yeah, I didn't really take French. You can probably tell. Which means roughly to begin. And that's from the 1700s. And entrepreneur was first used by Jean-Baptiste Say. I don't know if that's Say or Say, S-A-Y. Jean-Baptiste Say in the 1800s to describe the movement of capital from less productive to more productive pursuits, perhaps, with some risk, presumably. You don't get nothing. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We'll talk about that later. My favorite version of this, the use of this term, an entrepreneur is someone with an idea but no money, and thus venture capital is born. Whichever, the term has been around far longer than the modern notion of tech has. In the 1800s, we may have been seeing the Babbage difference engine, perhaps, Pascal's computer, maybe. We should recognize, well, the slide rule may have been around. Anyway, the 1800s, there was no internet, to be sure. Whichever, the term has been around for longer than the notion of tech has. We should recognize and appreciate the fact that entrepreneur could be working on any number of things with or without an app involved. I have expressed this view for some time now. Innovation can take many forms as well. We should not impose limits or limitations right up front. Oh, you're working on something innovative? What's your website? What's the app you're building? What do you... Actually, we're doing something completely different. Enable decentralized meetups, please. Little typo there. So I'm going to pick on Tech Alley again. I always do, but because it gets so much attention, and it's the only game in town when you really think about it. So I'm going to pick on it again. And by the way, Josh Levitt, the founder and president of the nonprofit for Tech Alley, he was on an early episode of, I think it was this program. It may have been Innovate for Vegas. I'm sorry, Let's Innovate for Vegas. But we talked about Tech Alley. He put the cap at about 400 people before it would start to lose. It would become impractical beyond about 400 people, as he said. But there are some problems with each individual person that joins the total participation, the total attendance beyond, say, 120-ish. Aside from the food and just the plain capacity for the crowd, which if we don't touch on it here, I can't remember if I've touched on this, but we'll cover that. The Tech Alley concept is interesting as a higher profile entry point or gateway into the so-called startup scene of the greater Vegas area. The name, in my opinion, is unfortunate. Startup Alley would have been better, in my opinion, but this is for newcomers to the area visiting or sticking around to get a taste, to meet some people and get the beginnings of the lay of the land, if you will. The stated goal of Tech Alley, though, and this was from Josh, and we talked about this, was to remove the challenge of arranging venues for meetups and to form a critical mass around a meetup pool of sorts. That's my words. And this absolutely does not scale. So basically, the take home is this. And I've used examples like trying to take classes in a school setting, but if we say, okay, we're going to have meetups and we're going to make it easy for people to have meetups and everything's going to be focused on the startup scene or being entrepreneurial or innovation or what have you. And it's going to be on the third Saturday of the month, every month. Okay, on the surface, that sounds great. So now let us suppose that the crowd size kept growing by a few people every week. So you retain the people that are showing up and they tell two friends and they tell two friends and so on and so on. So the crowd size starts to grow. So now you have a couple of choices here. You have the existing collection of meetups that are meeting there every month. They've grown to depend on the critical mass of people that are there. So they don't actually attempt to build their attendance. They just have their event and the people are already there. This is kind of the shopping mall scenario, right? The mall attracts the crowd and you happen to be there, or people go there anyway. So at some point, your room, the space where you're having your meetup, will be full at some capacity. It may be a physical limitation, or it may just be the format of what you're attempting to accomplish doesn't account for, twice as many people as there were a couple of months ago. So there may be some issues. And don't forget, anything you are trying to accomplish really needs to be episodic, because the people that are here this time may or may not have been here last time, and they may or may not be here next time. So there was a meetup called Agile NV They were talking about agile project management, and their meetups linked together, but often about half the people in the room were not there last month, and they may or may not be coming next month. So it's very difficult to have events chained together. So essentially each meetup is a standalone gathering of people. Sometimes people will come month over month, and there may be different content, different presentation, different topics of discussion, but you can't always, and in fact, it's probably best to not assume people have been there before or will be returning. If you want to do that, it's probably best to have your own meetup somewhere outside of Tech Alley. Now, as I said, something like classes. If you've ever tried to schedule, make your schedule at a college, for example, there are 2 classes I need to take, but they're at the same time. So you're going to have to take one and you have to take the other one some other time or make other arrangements. So if Tech Alley is so popular that everybody has their meetup on the 3rd Saturday of the month, and as the crowd size grows, you now must decide, I'm attending Tech Alley. I want to see all the 3 meetups that are all happening at the same time. And this is the only place where they have the meetup. They only meet at Tech Alley once a month. Well, that just doesn't work. You've capped the growth and engagement of these different meetups because the meetups have grown to depend on the gathering of the people, the effort of getting people to return or to show up and so on. So in my mind, Tech Alley is a great incubator of sorts for meetups. If you want to kick off a meetup and say, and this has happened with, I think it's the Sin City developers, Sin City programmers, I think it was, which has eventually just become the programmers meetup, I think it is. I think the Python meetup might be doing this. So they have a meetup at Tech Alley, but they also meet up some other times. So I think the Tech Alley scene, I won't call it the startup scene. I think the startup scene really needs to be bigger than that. But the community of people that have grown to, they've grown accustomed to gathering for free lunch on the 3rd Saturday at the appointed time and place. It's a great way to begin this engagement, but so often it was the end of the engagement until next month. I think that's a shortcoming of this approach, and I think it just doesn't scale. Again, if you have 400 people, if you have 800 people, now what? So there really needs to be accommodation for the fact that not everyone is going to come back. Not everybody has an entire Saturday to give to an event like this. So they may show up for 1 or 2 meetups and then depart, which is fine. But if you limit yourself to having this one critical mass gathering, you've limited the participation in the meetups by the people who are appearing for that critical mass gathering. So really, Tech Alley is good as an incubator, in my opinion, but not necessarily the end of the engagement efforts. So these meetups should be taking place in a decentralized fashion, not all, as I always would say, don't hang your hat on one event because that just doesn't scale. The opportunity cost is a thing. What we see with Tech Alley with gatherings like Link Up by Startup.Vegas and maybe a couple of other meetups is a top-down, almost chaperoned event. By way of example, when I returned to my high school by invitation after a year at college to connect with some of our senior class college-bound colleagues. They were juniors when we were seniors. So a lot of people, familiar faces and so on. Hey, said our former teacher of the year and what do you call it? Sort of the sponsor of the ambassador program for some of the upper echelon seniors, people with the GPAs and a future of some sort. It sounds horrible. So we, everybody knew each other. Oh, hey, how's it going? A long time, this and that. Okay, so give some hints, some useful tips to your colleagues that you knew last year. They're about to enter the same world you're in now. So one of my peers, I'll simply say his name was Kevin. It made me laugh. One of my peers said the big life lesson after a year away from home was to remember to get toilet paper and do laundry. Really? This is my sense of these organized gatherings. At some point, matriculation becomes essential. Tech Alley should not be providing free lunch to anyone who intends to be an entrepreneur beyond a couple, after a couple of visits to Tech Alley, you really should be graduating to more focused gatherings. And it's like, okay, it's a networking event. You're rubbing shoulders, shaking hands, you're swapping business cards. Maybe you're there to, for transactional conversations, engagements about getting new clients, whatever. Sure. But at the end of the day, if you are mistakenly believing that this is how entrepreneurs really need to advance their cause, that's not entrepreneurial thinking. At some point you got to figure out that I got to get my own toilet paper and do my own laundry. Come on. Whenever I hear an entrepreneur complain that something is getting in their way or somebody should do that. Well, what is an entrepreneur? What is that? What is that again? To begin? So yeah, don't wait on somebody else. You got to do it. That's what entrepreneurialism is. It's doing it, making it happen. Now, the upside of the Link Up event, for example, it is not structured, unlike Startup Alley, which has almost like a class schedule, right? There are time slots in the morning, then there's the free lunch, then there's time slots in the afternoon, then possibly a launch event and a sort of a denouement at the end. The Link Up event that Startup.Vegas puts on at the WeWork facility near the airport is not structured. They simply have the space and you can come. You don't even actually, the space is available, but there is no actual requirement to even sit with the organizers of the event or the group that's attending. You and a couple of colleagues can go to the event, but then find your own little corner and have your own discussion. Never really interact. You could say thank you, I suppose, but they may not even be there. If they do show up, you could say that. Several of the times, the last couple of times I went, which was a while ago now, the people weren't even there. Space for these sorts of gatherings, though, to exchange ideas, demo works in progress, collaborate, learn, and so on, could be made available more often in more places than relying on just this one spot. And I think Link Up happens every 2 months, maybe? I don't know. Food and general curation, publicity, all of it should be handled by meetup organizers, co-work drivers, or whomever. If that's the goal, is to have a lunch, a free lunch or a food to draw the crowd. But if providing space for a critical mass gathering on one day each month is the big win, and if I can think of the 1 or 2 well-known gatherings each month for a so-called global hub of innovation, if it's that easy to list the couple of events where this is happening, well, Vegas, we do have a problem. We should not be hanging our hats on these couple of meetups that are run by other people. That is not how entrepreneurialism works, sad to say. There is no age limit, really, even though we haven't gotten there yet. Vegas is a place for adults. So they would have you believe 21 and over is the norm, which means meetups and gatherings, celebratory and recognition events, tend to require a birthday 21 years ago or more, which is a problem if you are building your startup in high school, for example, or junior high school or younger. So not everyone is going to be welcome at all events and gatherings, even though they are doing precisely what everybody who is looking at economic diversity is hoping for. Mixed messages? Absolutely. The take home, you may need to be this tall to ride the roller coaster at New York, but you do not need to be this old to be an entrepreneur. Sorry, that's just not how it works, nor to be an innovator, nor certainly an entrepreneurial innovator. You can do that any age you want. You just won't be invited or be allowed to enter any of these events that are going on. Let us be honest, there will be occasion when the teenager is smarter than all of us. They should be welcomed and not kept out waiting to turn 21. I've been saying this for ages. Innovate for Vegas Foundation, I say it all the time. All ages welcome. Bring your parents. Why not? While we're at it, our schools need to migrate into an entrepreneurial innovation mindset if they haven't already. Teaching people to enter the workforce has been a goal over the years. Somewhere I have a presentation or two that I found by the Clark County School District, the largest single employer in Southern Nevada. It's the 5th, give or take, largest school district in the United States. It seems consequential. Has Clark County School District stuck with their workforce training view? How about teaching people to enter the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem? Some will enter the workforce, some might do both. You can start your own business while you are participating in the workforce. Enabling an entrepreneurial bent is something we could and should start doing by age 12, and that should continue all the way forever. Why age 12? I've talked about this before. That's not the magic age, but it is the age when most public school curricula make for class switching. Now you've got a schedule. You're moving between classrooms. You have teachers that are focused on math and science and history and so on. Not quite as much as high school, perhaps, but it's when those things happen. Extracurricular activities. You may be maybe you're taking part in a FIRST or VEX robotics competition, so there might be an after-school gathering for that. sports, and so there are a variety of things that start to happen in the junior high school, 7th grade, age 12 time frame. You want to encourage that. You want to add to the mix so that people who at that young age have ideas are not told, oh, you're going to have to wait till you're 21. Sorry. Yes, it is good to include people who are not 21 so they may participate fully in the ecosystem. But this is not always completely practical, and age 12 is pushing it perhaps. I know Tech Alley was having, and I don't know if they still are, an event. One of the meetups was aimed at young people involved in entrepreneurialism. While at the time I was supportive of this, I have to wonder if just having one time slot, it's like having a kids menu at a restaurant. Like, oh, you can have one of these five things. You can have this very limited version of the food we serve here, but we're not catering to you. Well, okay, well, that's one way to do it. But this means that making meetups for much younger people mixed in with events that are not entirely young people friendly can be tricky. That was by way of example. Being the global innovation hub that we are, allegedly, we should be able to come up with a combination of meetups and after-school extracurricular activities that encompass entrepreneurialism, innovation, and embracing these in the modern era, making use of technology, tools, and methods as appropriate to let the young minds wander as they will in a place that works. Is this Tech Alley? Maybe. Is it closer to their school, like an after-school activity? Probably. Is there a way to bridge those two? Probably. Does it require some effort? Yes. Are we seeing that effort? Don't know. I wasn't. Who knows what they will come up with when they are allowed past the velvet rope? So that velvet rope could be, oh, sorry, we're having our entrepreneurial celebration at the Circa, so you have to be 21 to even enter the building. Or it could be at a different venue that is any age friendly, because if you're entrepreneurial, you should be at this event. Well, what if I'm only 12? Well, bring your parents. Is it appropriate for a 5-year-old to attend such a thing? I don't know. How many 5-year-old entrepreneurs are there? Well, maybe it's more than 0. We don't even know. So yeah, it's time to stop thinking 21 plus is some magic number. The magic can happen anytime. So can we make a scene? By the way, I'm not diving too deeply into this stuff. I could go on forever. My clock says 51 minutes already, and we got 2 more sections. So can we make a scene? It is absolutely possible to create the geographical plot of land, on which a scene could develop. A locality, a spot, a district, cheap or free food, places where people can congregate without the need to buy something or depart after some amount of time, maybe some music or other background din that is not overwhelming or overly polarizing. Today, we need to have an internet access, of course, some kind of internet access. Outlets into which we plug our laptops and other devices to charge them, and some communication channels. That last one's important. Word of mouth is the best for something like this. That is how you engage with people that are of similar mind or interest, right? Discovery on meetup.com, that just be tire kickers. I've had enough meetups with that mode where people, I had some time to kill, so I thought I would just stop by your meeting. Oh, great. That's exactly what we're not looking for. Social networks are a somewhat disappointing but necessary version of the word of mouth, some way of letting people who are interested in what is going on know what is going on in such a way as newcomers can also discover this potentially interesting area to check out. So in other words, these communication channels, they may be word of mouth, they may be social media and sharing and whatnot. That's how people can be attracted. If the big headline is free food, I don't know about that. But if it's, hey, we have a creative scene here, we have an open mic, we have which is good for music or comedy or pitching startups, which is part of the Cafe Genius story. If you are interested in meeting other people, if you have a project you're working on, you want to talk about, if you want to just meet people that are also working on startups, et cetera, right? So the startup scene can just sort of organically emerge if you've built the pieces so that people can discover it, and if they have a place to come and hang out. By the way, this is something that the Innovation Hub, I think, encompasses, which is yet another innovation district, but developed farther south to be located between the Innovation Center, INNEVATION, and the Blackfire Innovation site at the tech park, which is near IKEA, by the way. So, let's place another innovation hub, a place of innovation, another innovation district, if you will, because while we already have one, we definitely need another one. And if you look at the site plan, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, so I'm not going to harp on this too much, but the innovation hub design is essentially, we need to create collaboration spaces for co-working and coffee shops and bars and restaurants. And then you're like, so you want to create another Vegas? Like, we already have all those things. And in fact, we already have those things in the innovation district in the city of Las Vegas downtown. So what is the actual value proposition of actually building another one? Are we running out of space in the one that we already have? That's, I don't know if anybody's asked that question, or is it just, we want to have another one? So can we make that scene? Well, I guess if you build enough buildings. So you want to have newcomers be able to find it, to participate, right? Oh, Tech Alley, I'm not in tech, so that must not be for me. Code for Vegas, oh, I'm not a coder, that must not be for me. These are part of the problem. So we changed our name. If you build it, they will come. A good line from a good book, then a movie. But is it true? The problem with the notion that one can build a community or a scene or an ecosystem, that last one is, of course, nearly impossible when you really think about it. There are a lot of moving parts that are outside of the control of the so-called builder. The people, for example, they have to either like what you've built, quote unquote, or they may not show up, or they may not continue to show up. My go-to example, pretty simple, is a wheat field. Yes, wheat. You would use it to grow wheat in the wheat field. And then you can make bread or pizza or whatever you want. I can build a wheat field. So can you. Take a while if it's just one person, but we can do it. We can install irrigation plumbing. We can till the soil, manage pests and plant illnesses, make sure everything's all healthy and good. And eventually harvest a crop of wheat. And maybe we can sell it or make bread or whatever we're going to do with it. Did I grow wheat? No, I did not. I built an environment where the wheat could grow. The wheat did its growing. That's what wheat does. It grows. We don't grow wheat. Wheat grows. Can we build community? Not really. We can build the parts that would support and be attractive to people who might make use of these resources and, like wheat, grow themselves a community or scene with people of similar interests and goals and whatnot, finding value and maybe returning some. If you build it, they will come. But will they stay? And will they come if they never know about it? If you build an ecosystem, if you build a scene in the middle of a forest and nobody hears it, will they know it exists? I just made that up. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like a tree falling. So I would say, yes, we can make a scene just like we can make a wheat field. And technically a scene in a community, very similar. We can assemble the pieces. We can get the word out. We can enable the people or the wheat to do their thing. And maybe we end up with a bountiful crop of music, art, creativity, innovation, and maybe some wheat. Posting on LinkedIn that our wheat field is awesome does not make wheat grow faster or better. And I could say the same for, the other stuff. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn. That's putting it lightly. I think it does a disservice, actually. So let's make a scene. Let's make a scene. Talking about what we want to have happen is interesting. And in the early days, talking about it can help to gather the early adopter personalities that will help to bootstrap the thing, whatever it is. Aspiration is good initially, but making it happen requires action, of course. And then we need to make sure people know about that action and resulting outcomes that I always refer to as discovery, which also includes ongoing events, gatherings, activities, personalities, resources, all of it. Enabling people to join in, to be a part of this scene is important and is not always easy, especially in places like Greater Vegas with a variety of other scenes and noise and distraction and so on. In fact, I would wonder if calling it a startup scene is something that the builder of said scene should do, or if it should just get a name. Like calling something the arts district, that's part of the administration connection with the government and the allocation of the space and the determination of its uses and designation for tax purposes, whatever. That's something. But the arts district of downtown Vegas is becoming something that is not necessarily limited to the arts district or an art scene. So should we call it an art scene, or should the people that are in it or who make it up call it whatever they want? It could be something entirely different. So attaching labels is tricky business. If you're a computer scientist, you do know that one of the two classic computer science problems, cache line invalidation being probably the more easily solved one, naming things and off by one errors. Cheers to Phil Carlton, one of my colleagues at Netscape, who coined that phrase. We would like our scene to be self-sustaining. Why? Because if we attract people with free food and then the free food goes away, we may not have built a scene so much as provided free food to people who were drawn to the free food. More generally, participation in our scene should not depend on the resources we provided initially and will actually end up doing well if participants find their own levels, if you will, like what works for them, not what we give them. The epicenter of some scene may be a particular place for a time, but it may move to some other place. This does not necessarily mean the scene is gone. The hypocenter, we're talking earthquakes here, the hypocenter may be right where it was before. It may surface somewhere else, a different epicenter, but the same hypocenter. Do you know what I mean? It's the same scene, but we just meet in a different part of town, or maybe we meet in multiple parts of town now. This, by the way, is why food trucks are interesting, but let's stay on topic. Side note, natural wheat seeds, not sterilized by Monsanto and others to maintain a grip on farming, the farming economy, are intended to catch the wind and land elsewhere, ideally in additional proximal or distal future wheat fields. So you don't have to have just one wheat field. Crazy. You don't have to have just one tech scene. In fact, a second scene. Anyway, we've talked about that. So let us review and ponder getting started on this for real. Entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. I've talked about this many times. I define it with these 4 pillars. You may have a different view. You may have 8 pillars. You may have 2. I could see arguments for those variations. So mine, I usually put this last, but we may as well put it first because it's the first one everybody thinks of. Access to capital. It's the one everybody always focuses on completely. I've literally heard people say, well, if there's access to capital, then the other stuff will just happen. Talk to somebody who's won the lottery and their descent into hell too often. So yeah, having access to capital enables growth, enables more, maybe some more risk. If you have capital that is not risk averse, more room for innovation, thinking outside the box, faster growth, access to talent from other places, et cetera, et cetera. So access to capital is important. It's not the only thing, but it is definitely a thing. An innovation culture. I used to say community, but and this is something that I think the Downtown Project actually did some interesting things with. Not perfect, but it was interesting that it was not, hey, let's build another little mini Silicon Valley. It was, hey, why don't you come here and open a new restaurant, start a new service business, pursue something that is not necessarily development of an application, but it could be any number of different variations on entrepreneurialism. So I think that's one of the take-home lessons from the Downtown Project was the serendipitous collision thing is interesting. It's hard to count on that. But if you do bring people of different ilks into proximity, who knows what could happen. So innovation culture is about cultivating. You can't really pour innovation culture on top of a place, but you can provide the things, just like the wheat field. You can provide the things that will draw people who are of that mindset, so that they want to hang out, they want to collaborate a little bit. You provide the fertile ground and see what comes of it, right? The fertile ground you provide may not be where it actually takes off, but that may be where that initial batch of seeds catches the wind, if you will. But anyway, that analogy may be getting tired. We need education and talent. That means including, maybe it's age 12, maybe it's before, but students, the student mindset, what people are learning, the talent pool, people that are in, and they don't have to be educated formally to have the talent, et cetera, right? So those are kind of two sides of a coin. But having the people within the culture, but the people that actually want to pursue. Now, innovation culture and having a talent pool, they overlap. But an innovation culture could have people that are not entrepreneurial, but who are interested, who participate, who are supportive. They'll buy your Kickstarter thing. They'll show up to a presentation. They'll talk about it with their friends. They're interested in what's going on in their city, right? So this culture of innovation includes the people that are in the area, the geographical area, or it could be virtual. They don't have to be participating directly, but they are participating by being interested, being involved, being a part of that culture of innovation. But the education and talent pool components, those are people that you can actually hire or co-found a startup with or work with in a clinic-like arrangement to have students develop some of what you're trying to develop as part of their classwork, technically, et cetera, et cetera. I may have talked about this previously, the clinic program that we tried to introduce at UNLV. And finally, infrastructure. That is a combination of legislation and regulation. So it could be at the state, sometimes federal, but state level, hopefully county and city. There will be hard resources like availability of internet access, power, water, roadways, etc. So your public works. These could be government resources, or industry might step in and provide some buildings, some co-work spaces, some lab spaces. So we have a little bit of those here. That's our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. Now, our scene. Let's make our scene. Let's make a scene. We've touched on these. Recognition and celebration, part of our innovation culture. So if people are doing cool stuff, people should know about it. Other people should know about it. Not the back pages of our legacy media. And not ignored completely by content creators. Now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of money to be made. And, you can go walk around an empty casino and keep pointing out to people that Vegas is dead. Or you can wander around other gatherings and say, oh, wait, there is stuff going on in Vegas. It just doesn't happen to be gaming. Diversity of pursuits. Not everything is a software startup. Entrepreneurs and innovation come in all shapes and sizes. Discovery. This is alignment with old school media, of course, while also leveraging socials and influencers. But most importantly, and this is so often overlooked here, enabling and encouraging people who find value in the scene, so-called scene, to invite others to talk about it, word of mouth, link to it on their social media accounts, talk about it in general, blog about it, take pictures, post videos, all this stuff. Just don't assume someone else is talking about it. If you're excited about it, tell people. Referrals for the win. There are no practical limits, believe it or not. Age is the one we looked at here. That comes up all the time on the surface. This seems to be the most obvious here in Vegas, especially it's glaring with the 21 plus label slapped on events and gatherings, especially when they are held at bars and adults only venues like Circa. In general, so these are not uncommon at all, too common. Involving schools and extracurricular school adjacent activities can bridge this gap somewhat. I would have to wonder if adults would show up to a school only open to 21 below. You must be 12 or under to attend this hackathon, right? So adults are often welcome as chaperones or participants in some way at events that are geared for younger people. We can make that work the other way. Finally, final point, encourage decentralization. The scene need not rest on one single monthly event, nor one particular geographical region, nor particular organizers. What happens if the person that organizes that one event that everybody goes to suddenly becomes unavailable, needs to move away, becomes unable to continue? Now what? More people meeting more often, talking about and engaging in more things, in more ways, with the various pieces in place to go where the people take it. Seems weird, doesn't it? I usually resort to my Lego bricks analogy here. Spread the bricks out on a table. Do not tell people what to build or how to or where to build or anything. See where they take it. Some will even bring their own Lego bricks, and then your scene is going places. So yeah, I think the notion of a startup scene or a tech scene here needs some maturity. I've recently learned from someone who I will not name, but from someone who works for the city of Las Vegas, that the notion of Vegas as a global innovation hub and so on is being pared back a little bit due to some funding limitations and I think there's a lack of core competence here. I don't know that the city of Las Vegas, the people that are trying to drive this, that are actually working with or for the city, know what they're doing. Nor do I believe in general, and I've mentioned this before, nor do I believe that a city or government entity should be driving these things. Do that infrastructure, make the internet work, make sure there's electricity and water and the streets are functional. It'd be nice to be able to get around with bike lanes and safe bike lanes, the ability to move around on public transit safely and so on. These are important. These are important so that people can meet face to face or online with the functional internet. But should the city be trying to dictate what sorts of innovations will be popularized? Oh, we're going to focus on AI in Vegas. Really? What about the actual people doing the innovating? Maybe they have other ideas. So listen to the people on the ground and enable them. Don't try to tell them what to do. That would be my bit of advice. So I don't know that the city of Las Vegas or that the greater Vegas area in general has all of its ducks in a row here. And I can say for a fact, well, my opinion of a fact, they don't necessarily know what they're doing. And I know, unfortunately, as well, that there were some visits to other cities that are, hey, we're going to be the next Silicon Valley too. I know that there was a visit to Plug and Play, which is a kind of a co-work accelerator space, multiple locations in Silicon Valley. I think there was a visit there in the 2022 timeframe. So 3-4 years ago, say, maybe not pre-pandemic. It was definitely in the post-pandemic era. So we had people from Vegas visiting the trailing edge of Silicon Valley to see, oh, we can do that. We can establish some co-work spaces. We have the Vegas Tech Summit, which is people who made their money on existing infrastructure. They don't know how to develop a culture of innovation. They know how to extract. And I've already talked about the fact that we have an extraction economy already. Oh, we can build our startup, or we can encourage our employees to move here. We can take advantage of the tax incentives, the lack of income tax, for example. We can get We can get incentives from the GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and other maybe local incentives. And we can capitalize on that without actually cultivating anything. So the take home really is part of this whole making a scene is about cultivating something. And I will say it as I have in a recent episode of this very audio program, we have an extraction economy and an extraction mindset. People visiting here, we want them to gamble, to take part in the fun economy, extract some money, send them on their way. Hopefully they'll come back. One of the problems, we're trying to extract too much. That's not as good. People don't like that as much. They want to feel like they had a good time and a value proposition that makes sense, not, I paid $9 for water. Extraction mindset, not healthy. Extraction economy, not necessarily good, not necessarily sustainable. We need to cultivate things. Part of that cultivation, in my opinion, is taking some of the entrepreneurial innovation mindset, some of the ecosystem participants, the population, and pointing them towards our ecosystem itself. Some of what you're building, some of what you're pondering, some of the things, the problems you want to solve, the communities you want to elevate should be right here. Make the ecosystem better. Make a better Vegas. And that is where I'll leave it for today. Thank you for listening as always. I got 1 hour and 12 minutes on my clock. So we'll see where this ends up with a little bit of silencing of the truncating of the silence, I should say. Tighten it up a little bit. It'll be at least 1 hour and 5. And I'll thank you for listening. And all websites are works in progress, but then so is everything else. Do you think innovation just happens overnight? Some people do. Take it easy. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.